don't usually go to the beach at night. Something about the ocean in the dark just feels wrong. The way the waves seem black, swallowing everything, the way the horizon disappears into nothingness. But that night, my friends convinced me. It was supposed to be a chill hangout, music, drinks, a bonfire. The beach was empty, no lifeguards, no tourists, just us and the sound of the waves crashing in the distance. The night air was thick with salt, and for a while, everything felt normal. We joked around, played music, and even waded into the water. But then someone suggested we walk further down the shoreline, away from the firelight, just to explore. I remember hesitating. There was something unsettling about stepping into the darkness, away from the only source of warmth. But no one else seemed to think twice, so I followed. That's when we found it. At first, I thought it was just sand art, some intricate, sprawling pattern drawn deep into the beach. But as we got closer, it became clear that it was something else. The design stretched further than we could see, the shapes too sharp, too precise, like they hadn't been made by hand. My stomach tightened. Then we saw the words carved into the sand around it. "Do not disturb. This place is marked. You shouldn't be here." The air changed. It felt thicker, heavier, pressing against my skin. The silence between us stretched, our laughter gone. "It's just a prank," Nate muttered, his voice forced. "Local kids messing around." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the thing that unsettled me the most, there were no footprints, nothing. No trails leading up to the symbols, no marks from hands or sticks. The sand around it was untouched, smooth as if no one had ever stepped there. It didn't make sense. It wasn't possible. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out strange, thin. That's when Ava, the quietest in our group, whispered, "Do you hear that?" I strained my ears. At first, I thought she was just on edge. But then, I heard it, a whisper, soft, faint. It didn't sound like the wind. It didn't come from behind us or from the ocean. It was coming from the sand. A gust of wind slammed into us suddenly, strong enough to send grains of sand stinging against my skin. But the markings, they didn't move. The words carved into the beach remained untouched, pristine. "Let's go," someone said, and no one argued. No jokes, no questions, just movement. We turned and walked back, fast but not running, as if we knew, somehow, that running would make things worse. The entire way back, I felt it, a presence, like we weren't alone, like something was just beyond our sight, watching. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see someone standing by the markings, staring after us. But there was nothing, just the endless blackness of the beach stretching behind us. By the time we reached the bonfire, we weren't talking anymore. We just grabbed our things and left. No one said goodbye. No one made plans to hang out again. The next morning, I told myself it had just been some weird trick of the night, our minds playing games. But I had to know, so I went back. I walked to the same spot in broad daylight. The sun was out. The beach, bright and warm. The markings were gone. No patterns, no words, no trace that anything had ever been there at all. Like it had never happened, like we were never supposed to see it. I've always found the beach calming at night. No crowds, no screaming kids, just the sound of waves rolling in and the cool ocean breeze. That night was no different. I was out there alone, walking along the shoreline, letting the rhythmic crash of the tide clear my head. The beach was completely empty. At least, I thought it was. The damp sand was cool under my bare feet, still wet from where the tide had pulled back. I wasn't heading anywhere specific, just letting my thoughts drift as I moved. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that prickles against your skin but feels oddly refreshing. Then I stepped onto something strange, a patch of sand that was colder than the rest, much colder. I hesitated, looking down. It didn't look any different, just sand. But the sensation was unsettling, like stepping onto ice. A shiver ran through me, and I took another cautious step forward. That's when it happened. My foot sank. Not like stepping into soft or wet sand. This was different. It was sudden, forceful, as if the ground beneath me had opened up. Before I could react, my other foot slipped in, and I was sinking. Panic shot through me. I tried to step back, but the sand clamped around my legs. It wasn't quicksand. It felt like hands, like fingers wrapping around my calves, pulling me down. My breath caught in my throat as I struggled, thrashing. But the more I fought, the deeper I sank. The sand was swallowing me whole. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. My fingers clawed at the surface, desperate to find something solid to hold onto. That's when my hand hit something beneath the sand, something hard. Relief flooded through me. I gripped it tightly, trying to use it as leverage, but the moment I applied pressure, it crumbled in my hands. A dry, fragile snap echoed in my ears. Not a rock, not driftwood, a bone. A strangled cry tore from my throat, my body convulsing with horror as I flung it away. My breath came in frantic gasps, my chest tightening with a suffocating dread. I kicked wildly, twisting, trying to break free, my fingers tearing at the sand, but it was no use. I was going under. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the grip on my legs loosened. A wave crashed over me, cold and violent, dragging me forward with a force that sent me sprawling onto the shore. I lay there, gasping, shaking, my clothes soaked, my hands trembling, my pulse thundered in my ears, my skin prickled with a raw, unnatural cold that refused to fade. I pushed myself up onto my hands and knees, still coughing up seawater, my entire body shuddering. I turned to look back. The patch of sinking sand was gone. The surface was smooth, undisturbed, as if nothing had happened, as if I had imagined the whole thing. But the lingering sensation of something grabbing me was still there, a phantom grip clinging to my skin. I staggered to my feet, my breath unsteady. I needed to leave, now. I turned to go, but then I saw something that made my stomach lurch. Footprints, leading away from where I had been trapped. Not mine. They trailed off toward the water, vanishing at the shoreline. A numb, creeping dread seeped into my bones. I didn't wait to see if anything was coming back. I ran. Hard, fast. My legs were shaking, but I didn't stop until I was off the beach, back at my car, slamming the door shut with trembling hands. I don't go to the beach at night anymore, not because of the ocean, because of what's under it. My girlfriend and I had been planning a quiet getaway for months. We wanted somewhere peaceful, somewhere secluded, a break from everything. When we found the beach house listing, it felt perfect. Small, cozy, right on the shore. The kind of place where you could fall asleep to the sound of waves. The listing mentioned an old, abandoned lighthouse a short walk from the property. The pictures made it look eerie, but in a beautiful way, like something out of a painting. The first night, everything was perfect. The salty breeze, the rhythmic crash of the ocean, the feeling of being completely alone. We sat on the back deck, sipping wine and listening to the waves. But as the last traces of sunlight disappeared, something caught my eye. A light. Faint but unmistakable, flickering from the top window of the lighthouse. I frowned. The place was supposed to be abandoned. Maybe it was just a reflection? A trick of the moonlight? I pointed it out to my girlfriend, but she barely glanced up from her drink. Probably some kids messing around, she said. By the time we went to bed, the light was gone. The next night, it returned. But this time, it wasn't in the top window. It was lower. A small, flickering glow from a mid-level window, like someone or something was slowly making its way down the lighthouse. I tried to ignore it, but it nagged at me. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, that something was just beyond the reach of our vision, watching. By the third night, I was done pretending it was nothing. The light had moved again. Now it was at ground level. And that wasn't the worst part. Just after midnight, we heard it. Knocking. Slow. Deliberate. Not on the front door, not on the windows, on the back door, the one facing the lighthouse. A cold chill crept up my spine. My girlfriend sat up, her face pale in the dim light of the room. We stared at each other, silent, listening. 3 more knocks. Just patient. I forced myself to move to check. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last. My breath was tight in my chest. My fingers trembled as I reached for the curtain, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario I could think of. I pulled it back. There was nothing there. Just the empty beach. Just the lighthouse standing in the dark. The light was gone. We didn't wait to see if it would come back. We packed in a frenzy, throwing clothes into bags, grabbing only what we needed. We didn't speak, didn't ask questions. Whatever was happening, we wanted no part of it. We rushed to the car, desperate to leave. But when I grabbed the handle, I stopped cold. The doors wouldn't open. The handles felt jammed, packed with something gritty. I shone my phone's flashlight over them, and my stomach clenched. Sand. Thick, damp sand shoved into every crevice, packed into the keyholes. I yanked at the door harder, but it wouldn't budge. Then my girlfriend gasped. The interior. The seats, the dashboard, the floor, it was all covered in sand. Not scattered, not like something had blown in. No, this looked deliberate. The fine grains coated every surface, smooth and untouched, as if someone had been waiting for us to dig our way out. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say. We abandoned the car and ran back to the house, locking the bedroom door behind us. We sat on the bed, backs pressed against the wall, waiting for the sun to rise. Neither of us slept. At dawn, we grabbed what we could carry and left that place behind. A tow truck came later for the car, but I didn't care about the details. I didn't want to know what they found inside. I don't know who or what was inside that lighthouse, but I know one thing: it was coming closer.